So we are going to go through a scenario regarding a overweight horse.
So today we'll be talking with a horse owner that has come in looking for, something to help their horse lose weight. My first question to them, as most horse owners, would be, how old is your horse?
She is 10.
She's 10. So when you think about the age, again, the age is not a huge factor in that, but if this is a very young horse or older horse, we do need to know that as far as how we start to make some recommendations. The next question would be, what is their current condition? Where are you seeing that extra weight distributed over their body?
Quite a bit in the shoulders and along the rib cage. Almost, I'd want to say dimpled.
Perfect. So that's a great direction to go. And I would say most horse owners are going to be able to describe over their rib cage, maybe around their tail head, or have that dimply look to them. If they're not really sure how to describe it to you, you can ask them, if you push on their side, can you feel their ribs? Or you have to push really hard, or can you not feel them at all? How does that feel? That's a good way to kind of get a gauge of how overweight this horse is. My next question would be to go into their medical history. So I would ask, first, has your horse been examined by a vet? And do you know of any current medical issues with them?
Yes, it has been determined that she has a metabolic issue.
Perfect. So we can kind of go two different directions here. So if we're asking about vet care, we're really wanting to know if this horse has any medical conditions that would make our feed recommendations different. If this is just simply a horse that's being fed too much and is overweight and not working hard, that is kind of a little bit easier process as far as not having to be careful about exactly which products you recommend. Because her horse in particular does have a metabolic concern. Your metabolic concerns are typically going to be focused around the starch and sugar in their diet. So when we start to make those recommendations, we need to keep that in mind as far as what product that we recommend they put in front of them. So then I would go into the feed and ask, what is your horse currently being fed?
Grass hay.
Just grass hay. Okay, so this is a really good example, because this horse is obviously one that maintains weight very easily. But I would also want to know, what is the activity level? Are you riding this horse at all, or is it just in the pasture?
Very minimal exercise.
Perfect. So those two questions go together, are very important, because you want to know what is going into them and how many calories are being worked off of them. So once you kind of have that idea, we know that this horse has a metabolic concern, which will likely predispose her to being overweight. She's not really getting much exercise, it sounds like, and she's just getting grass hay. So it's not necessarily a horse that is being overfed and being given a bunch of different products that we could eliminate from their diet. When making this recommendation, the number one thing I want to say is we don't want to decrease the forage in their diet to where they're not getting enough. Even an overweight horse needs a certain amount of forage. So you want to stay with a lower calorie forage, which would be like a grass hay. So we may ask, how many pounds of that grass hay is she getting in a day?
Oh, she's getting like big flakes.
Okay.
Yeah. She's spoiled.
Okay, so, and that's going to be your first direction to say, okay, so if you could estimate how many pounds that is, or say, let's think about, if these are two really big heavy flakes, we're probably over 2 or 2.5% of her body weight, so looking at maybe over 20 pounds of hay a day. You could very easily decrease that hay to maybe 3/4 or half of that, so that you can slowly bring her back on those calories. Okay, so once you've talked a little bit about that forage, maybe decreasing the amount of forage, we would talk about potentially adding in a diet balancer or some kind of concentrated supplement in order to make sure that horse's diet stays balanced and help them to kind of metabolize everything and utilize the nutrients properly in their diet.
How would you treat this scenario differently if the horse did not have a metabolic issue and it was known that was a medical diagnosis, that it was not metabolic, the overweight?
So I would treat it pretty similarly. Fortunately, our diet balancers that we're thinking about on the market are typically lower in starch and sugar, which helps us, because that helps us be able to make those recommendations honestly, whether they have a metabolic concern or not. The only difference there may be, the hay, if she was feeding a forage or something that's a higher starch and sugar hay, that may affect that recommendation. We may take them off of that hay and switch them to a different to make sure that it's a lower starch hay for a metabolic horse, or we could adjust based on that horse not having a medical condition.
What metabolic issues are associated with horses being overweight?
So your most common metabolic concerns that are going to cause a horse to be overweight, the number one would probably be insulin resistance. Equine metabolic syndrome is another one. Those two in particular tend to help, cause a horse to be a little bit heavier. Cushing's disease as well can have horses that are overweight. So asking that question is important there. That's something to really know where that horse is. Say the horse has a metabolic concern, but it's more of a, laminitis issue, which laminitis wouldn't typically make them overweight, but you don't want them overweight because of that extra weight on their feet, which is what the ultimate goal would be for that horse. So understanding that and knowing that those, few diseases will kind of be working against you to some point as far as trying to get weight off of them is very important.
Would you recommend a little bit more exercise?
If exercise is possible, that is a question that I did not go into, but you definitely can, is asking them, can the horse be exercised? Does it, maybe it has a lameness issue where it can be exercised, but if it can, and the owner is able, even some lunging or some exercise throughout the day, light riding, would be helpful as far as burning calories for those horses too.
Excellent. Thank you very much.